what's up? It's Cole, coming to you for my part 2 of my episode focusing on Marvel's 70th Anniversary Collection, a fairly new collection that's out, as 2009 saw the official 70th Anniversary of Marvel. With that came sort of a wave of stuff focusing on the Golden Age, and I have a real fascination with Golden Age comics. That would be from about 1939 into the 40s and dying out somewhere in the 50s. Anyway, just sort of that first wave of North American superheroes, or superheroes in North American comics, like Marvel and DC and that sort of thing. And because of that, there was a series called the Marvels Project, which is currently ongoing. These are the first 4, I believe it's of 8. I've got a couple of variant covers here, like this one. Doesn't have anything on it. Cap, Submariner, and the original Human Torch. And here's one with the lesser-known crime fighter, the Angel. And a lot of it's told from his perspective, sort of how he uncovers a Nazi plot. And it's a really interesting thing to collect, because it's sort of how the main stuff we see in the Marvel Universe now, how it's sort of got kickstarted. Now, of course, there's lots of stuff that goes back hundreds and thousands of years, but this is sort of like, again, North American superheroes, European too, but the idea of costume crime fighters and sort of how that came about and how certain events are tied up. Okay, so last time we did, we got up to the 70s. Hopefully you watched the first part, that would help. And it just gets us up to, so each decade has some hand-picked stories representing the decade. And we left in the 60s. I know they wanted to get a Steve Ditko Spider-Man in there, and that's what they did with the whole Spider-Man No More thing. Also had the Kingpin in it, as you can see, back in the days before he would really become, it was funny, they introduced him sometime in the 60s, and he seems like he's going to be pretty cool, and then he's sort of not really used throughout the 70s, and he's revived by Frank Miller to become a very important figure to this day, really, in the Marvel Universe. Anyway, so got to get ahead here, and I was saying how a lot of the selections kind of disappointed me, and one is, I get why they wanted to do like a Spider-Man 60s Steve Ditko thing, but I wish they'd flipped the Avenger story and had the Avengers in the 60s and Spider-Man in the 70s, and I'll explain. What they lead off in the 70s with here is Avengers number 93 from November 1971, this Beachhead Earth, which is almost like a 2-part story. And it was drawn by Neil Adams, which is a pretty big deal, of course. He would really achieve a lot of fame drawing for DC. He sort of reinvented the way to draw Batman, if you ask me. But anyway, so it's nice art, Neil Adams story. It mostly focuses on Henry Pym in his guise as Ant-Man, as he's trying to save the Vision, and it involves a neat little a thing about going inside of him, shrinking down, going inside, and fighting off weird forces to fix him up. So it reminds you of that sort of old things from the 50s, really, like the Incredible Shrinking Man and that sort of thing, and it's really interesting and well done. And then when the Vision revives, he finally explains about how he'd been attacked by supposedly the Fantastic Four, but obviously things impersonating it, and it turns out to be a Skrull plot, which also but he was against the original Captain Marvel, there he is, and so obviously in the last little while in the Marvel continuity, Skrulls have come back and it's sort of been a big deal. So here's a little backstory, which is kind of interesting, talking a little about some of the Skrulls' first forays on Earth against him and the Super Skrull. Anyway, not a bad story, but this is what I wish they had done. I wish for the 60s they had done they had the Avengers story from there. I wish they had Avengers number 4. That's from early 1964, and that would have been the one where they get Cap out of the ice and bring him back into continuity. Here's another one-shot I got that has to do with the whole 70th anniversary thing, the All-Winners Squad, and that is a replacement Cap, Jeff Mace. This is circa 1946 or so, because the idea was after Cap and Bucky exploded over the North Atlantic in the closing days of World War II to stop the Red Skull, they wanted to hush it up, and presumed dead for all those years. The American government wanted to hush it up that it ever happened, so they had some replacement Caps. But anyway, so here's the Avengers stumbling upon Cap, and that's really when the Avengers really got its identity. It started, of course, I'm wearing my Avengers shirt for the occasion, and here is the original lineup with Cap, Iron Man, Thor, Ant-Man, and the Wasp. Where the hell is the Wasp? There she is, she's up there. And anyway, but if the real original lineup was that minus Cap plus the Hulk, so basically they bring Cap in, Hulk goes out, and it goes on from there. Okay, so I wish they had included that. I think that would have been better. And anyway, and then in the 70s, instead of the Avengers story, I wish they'd had the Spider-Man story. I wish they had Spider-Man either number 121 or 122. Of course, the 1973, the death of Gwen Stacy, one of the most probably significant deaths in Marvel Comics and comics in general. One of the few people to actually stay dead, thank God. And of course, at the hands of the Green Goblin. Actually, that was a comic that influenced me very early on. I was very lucky to read it. Believe it or not, Raiho had a copy of at least 122. I don't know if he had 121, but I distinctly remember holding and reading and having in my hands 122, which is the, well, 121 has the fight and her death, and 122 picks up with Spider-Man holding her body, going, "That was the woman I loved, Goblin, you're gonna pay," blah, blah, and like nearly beating him to death, and then the first supposed death of Norman Osborn, the self-impalement on the glider. I wish that was in here. Again, these seem like really significant events that are being left out, and like I said last time, it just seems like John Rhett Thomas had just sort of decided he would try to show lesser-known stuff, and I get that, but I just don't think it's very well applied here. So we go through the 70s. We have the Demon in the Bottle story from 1979 on Iron Man. No complaints about that. It's not that interesting, but it shows his problems with alcoholism, which to this day are still haunting him. And then of course in the parallel Ultimate Universe, since it's all in only about year 2 of its continuity, still a very, very prevalent issue with that Tony Stark. This Tony Stark, he's supposed to have it mostly behind him, so it's not that interesting, but it's alright. Then, okay, into the 80s, we have And Hellfire Is Their Name, April 1980, an X-Men story. Then the Daredevil 161, featuring Elektra, her first appearance, I believe, which is a very good thing to have. And then Vicious Circle from Incredible Hulk, February 87, which isn't much of a story. It's Hulk in his gray phase, but it's kind of interesting because it was drawn by a very young, mostly unknown at the time, Todd McFarlane, who of course would just become a superstar artist, and sort of cause a shift in comics in the late 80s going into the 90s, where the artists actually became more important to the readers anyway than the writers, and stories sort of started taking a back seat, and it sort of became style over substance, and I'm not really a fan of that. McFarlane, of course, would go on to found Image Comics with a lot of other people, and they were doing some important things. I'm not going to talk about that here because we're trying to get through a collection. The Hellfire Club story is very good. It's all about the Hellfire Club's efforts to control Jean Grey. Now that she has the Phoenix power, and they turn her into Black Queen, and they very quickly beat up and defeat that version of the X-Men. That's sort of like the official second version. So Angel's not there, although he's in this comic because they go to meet him. Storm, Nightcrawler, Colossus. I don't think Kitty Pryde is there. She's somewhere else. Wolverine. Cyclops. Where are you, Cyclops? Cyclops must have been waiting with Angel or something like that too. I can't remember. Anyway, it has a nice ending thing with like Wolverine saying, "Okay, suckers, you've taken your best shot. Now it's my turn." And it's a very nice shot of Wolverine. I hate this glare. I'm sorry, but it's hard to do. But you see him there? Yeah. Next issue, Wolverine alone. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Yeah. The Daredevil, which I already have because I have the collected paperback of Daredevil, Frank Miller and Klaus Janson. This is Volume 1. I have both volumes. Originally, I really wanted to get the hardcover that includes both of them together. It's tremendously expensive, but I really wanted to get it. But at the time, I couldn't order it or anything like that, and I ran out of patience, and I bought these two, and they're still really great to have. And yes, included in here is that issue, so that's one of the things I already have. Okay, I'm going to stop here, and we're going to do 90s and the other at the end. Again, it's weird, it's my first ever 3-part episode, but I don't like flying through this stuff, and so far, how am I feeling about this? Again, I'm happy to have it, it's a good thing to own. If you're into Marvel history, it's sort of a must-have, but in a way, it just seems like, some of the more important and obvious choices they could have made, they decided not to. They decided to forego that to go for, again, maybe things people weren't as aware of. I respect that, but I don't know if it really belongs in a collection like this, so believe it or not, Cole's doing a part 3, so hopefully you won't lose interest. So thanks a lot, guys. I'll be seeing you really soon, and peace. Bye-bye.